Hi, this is Pod Save the UK. I'm Nish Kumar.
And I'm Coco Khan. Nish, you're in the studio, and I'm joining you down the line to Pod Save the Pod from me and my horrible flu I've got going on here. Cold, virus, lurgy, whatever.
Coco has come down with some sort of unspecified combo illness. And as a consequence, for listeners of the podcast, I am sat on my own in the studio, in the bonquette, looking like somebody who overestimated the interest in their own birthday drinks. It's really got the energy of, I'll need the booth for 5 or 6, and I'm currently sort of sat here on my own with a laptop out in front of me. Anyway, on the show today, what is truth in an age where the President of the United States can post AI-generated imagery of himself with a crown on his head? The only thing we can be 100% sure of is that man is an absolute clown.
And we'll drill into truth. Nish speaks to a very special guest, the co-founder of Wikipedia, Jimmy Wales.
And later, we check on some other questionable distortions of reality featuring everyone's least favourite charlatan, Nigel Farage. But first...
I love AI. Do you use AI?
Absolutely.
Do you use Chat GPT? Do you know Chat GPT? I love Chat GPT. I love it. Chat GPT is fantastic.
Now, that is the former Prime Minister of this country. And I think we should all take a second and sit with that fact. I really feel like increasingly as the years pass and Boris Johnson's tenure as Prime Minister moves further into the rearview mirror, we are going to view him like someone we had sex with whilst incredibly drunk. It has that feel of like, oh my God, I did that with that man. Disgusting. That was Johnson speaking to Al Arabia English. But Coco, we're not just playing it because of its eternal meme potential and the truly strange way that he chose to pronounce AI and Chat GPT. We're playing it because it's time for an intervention. Something has troubled me and actually our listenership as well. We need to talk about your friend, Chatty G.
Okay, yeah. Just for clarity, like, we're not like friends. I have brought him up a few times. I accept that.
This is exactly the sort of defensiveness you get from an actual intervention. Can I just say?
Okay. I'm just saying, like, part of me bringing him up is because I know you don't like Chatty G.
Listen, everybody knows my feelings on AI, and everybody knows that I am a step away from throwing my phone in the bin and going to live in the woods. Obviously, that's not an option to me because I'm allergic to most things in the woods, but the spirit of it is right. But our listeners have actually also written in. So Yuri has written in and said, Coco, I'm with Nish on this one. Please, and please is capitalized, please don't use AI. I'm obligated to do an eye roll every time someone mentions that they used AI, and I'm already at risk of giving myself an injury at my job. I don't know what job Yuri does, but that's a very funny thought that somebody would have to be seeing like an optician because they've eye rolled too many times that people say they use AI. Kyla said, as much as I love Coco, I do bristle when she mentions her old mate Chatty G. As an actor and voiceover artist that works a day job in the print industry, I see AI as a very real threat to both my actual livelihood and the career I'm trying to transition into. I know AI is coming no matter what. I just hope we can pass worker-oriented legislation to minimize resulting job losses and strengthen the social safety net. Coco, what do you say to our listeners who are concerned about your use of AI?
First of all, this is a deeply harrowing moment for me. I don't really know what to do. I'm so ill and I'm being picked on.
This intervention, we did not know that you would be unwell at the time of this intervention.
Now you feel bad, don't you?
Well, now it feels like bullying.
Yeah. Thank you. I hope listeners that have joined us on this journey of this podcast know that I too share many reservations about AI, and I have only used, I feel like I've only smoked weed once. I've only used Chat GPT a few times, and I've egged it up for the purpose of annoying Nish. And I'd like to point out that every time I do use it, I often think to myself, how important is this? Can I justify the bottle of water that it takes? And, it's stuff that I really need for work.
Okay, so listeners, Coco has taken your criticism on board. I will say, slightly offensive that seems to have shifted the dial after I've spent weeks telling her not to do it. All it took was literally 2 emails from the listeners, and now she's like, I renounce Chat GPT.
I think that's what you call peer pressure. That's what that is.
Yeah. Devastating to know Coco doesn't consider me a peer. But listen, you shouldn't feel bad for using AI if, like Coco, you use AI, because You're not the only person doing it, right? So obviously Boris Johnson has given that absolutely unfathomable interview. In that interview, he actually talks about how he's been using ChatGPT to write his books. And you're like, of course you fucking have, you lazy piece of shit. Like, if there's one thing we know about Boris Johnson, it's that he is congenitally bone idle.
I can't believe, sorry, I missed one production meeting and this whole podcast now is about me using ChatGPT and you're comparing me to Boris Johnson.
I'm not comparing you to Boris
it.
Johnson. Also, can I say, this was the producers, Coco.
Yeah,
I
because I wasn't in the meeting because I was ill. This is bullying. This is bullying. Anyway, sorry, go on. Please carry on.
Starmer has also been actively encouraging the use of AI in Whitehall, and he says that he's determined to seize the golden opportunity that it offers.
Yes, and MPs are using it in their day-to-day to do business. So Labour MP Mark Seward's launched an AI version of himself to answer questions from constituents, which is a little bit creepy. I think that's a generous way to describe it. But another Labour MP, Mike Reeder, made headlines this summer after being spotted on a train using ChatGPT for casework.
The same MP, Mike Reeder, told Politics Home that his team play ChatGPT bingo to spot when they think an MP has used it to write their speech, saying that ChatGPT thinks parliamentary speeches should start with, "I rise to speak in support of."
Incredible.
Politics Home's analysis of Hansard, which is the sort of record of everything that's said in the House of Commons, shows that the phrase "I rise to speak" has been used 601 times across the Commons and the Lords so far this year, compared to only 131 in the first 8 months of 2024 and 227 times in the same period in 2023. So, I mean, is it possible that our political representatives are less effective at hiding their use of ChatGPT than children and university students?
Well, Peter Kyle, when he was Science Secretary, used ChatGPT to come up with policy advice. And that is something that I do genuinely feel strongly about. It's one thing to say, okay, can you collate some data? Can you read these 10 papers and, I don't know, give me a quick summary? That's one thing. I think it's another thing when you're actually using it to come up with ideas that are going to be sold to the public and the public have an implied feeling that those policy ideas have come from human beings, from the accountable government, from an entire system that is meant to be at least have some relationship to the notion of democracy. So that is genuinely quite scary. And over in Sweden, Prime Minister Ulf Kristersson has come under fire for admitting that he uses AI as a second opinion on running the country, which is strange because all ChatGPT would say to him is like, that's a great idea, Ulf.
I appreciate that this technology is coming no matter what. There is a part of me that, because whenever you talk to people about the benefits of it, they always bring up medical science. And I understand that there are incredible innovations in terms of helping doctors sift through data. But as my parents persistently remind me, I am not a doctor. An X-ray machine is an invaluable asset to a doctor. That doesn't mean that I need one in my house. The whole thing makes me uncomfortable. And I'm sort of aware that I am very out of step with everything that's going on around me.
The argument that's always made is that the technology itself is agnostic, but how it's used, that speaks to politics and that speaks to power. And it's difficult, isn't it? Because the build of these things already has a political story to it, and the robbery that it does in taking work, that obviously is a political issue. Having said that, though, you know, as you say, this thing is coming, it's unstoppable. Is expecting our politicians to not use it reasonable, or is it more reasonable to say, okay, you are, but you have to be upfront about it, you have to say how, and there needs to be guidelines immediately created in the same way that we have like a ministerial code of conduct, for example. Perhaps even use of AI should be included in that. So as our listener Kyle said, AI is coming no matter what, but we have to be abundantly clear that AI tools are still spouting relatively minor inaccuracies, like the "I rise to speak" thing. Sometimes it also gives absolute nonsense while delivering it with a confidence that only a robot could give, or a Conservative Party politician.
Look, and also tech journalists and people who understand this in a bit more detail than us will explain to you that generative AI is still, at this moment in time, exclusively based on the input that it's been given. So that is, you know, all of human history and all of its fallibilities and all of its weaknesses and all of its mistakes is sort of contained within AI. It's not this kind of omniscient, all-seeing God.
Yeah.
Also, obviously, it is worth talking about the environmental risk. The water usage to cool these data centers is massive. Also, there is growing evidence that AI is making us stupid. So an MIT study suggests that ChatGPT might be eroding critical thinking skills, which obviously for the purposes of this discussion, is the perfect segue into the master of stupid himself, the American President Donald Trump. So last week, the leader of the free world posted an AI-generated clip on his Truth Social page. For listeners of the pod, we're about to describe it. What we're seeing is Trump with a crown on his head. Trump is flying a fighter jet that's called the King Trump and is labelled as such, and then he dumps shit on protesters in American cities. So, I mean, there's any number of reasons why the implications of that are something we should all be very, very concerned about. There is all sorts of ethical conversations that we can go back and forth on. The fact that you can do this and generate this at this speed, particularly from a political communications perspective, is a massive, massive concern. A few months ago, everyone who listens to this podcast will remember there were pictures of Donald Trump with a bruised hand, and it led to various people speculating about the state of his health. There was a lot of speculation online about the potential of a clip from the Oval Office being generated by AI. And internet sleuths surmised that at the very least the video had some AI editing done on it to enhance the video. Regardless of whether that's true or not, it's clearly proving the point that we're needing to attack the things that we see online with a healthy dose of skepticism.
I mean, I can't speak for you, Nish, but even as someone who shamefully does use some of this stuff, I like to think I'm better than some people at spotting this stuff, but it is genuinely hard to see. And there is a concern that people with, particularly if they haven't used these tools before, it doesn't take much imagination to see how nefarious actors could misuse this. And of course, already our politics has a problem with trust. It's only going to make it worse.
So what is truth anymore? I mean, obviously that's a massive question. And the question of trust in the information we receive is one that's clearly going to plague us on a semi-weekly basis on this fucking podcast. In order to get into that conversation this week, I'm actually going to leave Coco to deal with her sickness, and I'm in the studio going to catch up with internet entrepreneur Jimmy Wales. PodSave the UK is brought to you by Calm.
Is anyone else feeling like this year is flying by way too fast? That where did the time go? Anxiety is real, and it can leave you feeling scattered and behind. Calm gives you permission to slow down even when everything else is speeding up.
And we're really trying, as we do this advert, to use our calmest voices. Because let's face it, I don't think anyone is going to be calmed down by me saying, you need to calm down. You just need to calm down. Everyone just needs to calm down. Thankfully, we are not the voices you will hear. Calm is the #1 app for sleep and meditation, and it's here to help you feel better.
If you feel like you could use some support navigating life's ups and downs, then get the relief you need with Calm's sessions. It offers things like guided meditations to help you work through anxiety and stress. I've actually used those before. You can do them for like 1 minute, 2 minutes, or for much longer times, depending on your needs at that moment. They help boost your focus, build healthier habits, and take better care of your physical health.
There are grounding exercises to help you reset and relax when you're feeling overwhelmed, and expert-led talks to help you handle grief, improve self-esteem, improve relationships, and more. There are also sleep stories, sleep meditations, and calming music to help you drift off to restful sleep quickly and naturally. That's something I've used in the past because I've got a history of bad sleep.
The Calm app puts the tools you need right in your pocket, so stress and anxiety relief is always within reach. Calm has over 2 million 5-star reviews and can help you stress less, sleep more, and live mindfully.
Calm your mind, change your life. Calm has an exclusive offer just for listeners of our show. Get 40% off a Calm premium subscription at calm.com/PSTUK. This is an amazing value.
Go to calm.com/PSTUK for 40% off unlimited access to Calm's entire library. Calm.com/PSTUK. And tell Calm you heard about them from us.
So I am delighted that joining us now is Jimmy Wales. Jimmy is best known for co-founding Wikipedia back in 2001. You know what that's all about. A free online encyclopedia that can be created and edited by anyone at any time. Jimmy, welcome to PodSave the UK.
Thanks for having me on.
Before we get into the book that you've written and the conversations that it instigates, I want you to wade in on a little dispute with me and my co-host who's sadly absent. Coco's a big fan of Chat GPT, which she lovingly calls Chatty G. I worry that we shouldn't be using that technology for trivial things. As somebody who, you've seen a couple of different iterations of the internet come and go, where do you stand on AI? And do you use it?
I use it all the time.
Wow.
I use it quite a lot, both ChatGPT, Gemini, and I do think for a lot of trivial things, i.e. trivia,
Yeah.
unbelievably bad. And
Oh, really?
if you ask it some basic factual questions, it very often will hallucinate and tell you something wrong, but not just wrong, but wrong and plausible.
Right.
I mean,
okay.
wrong and completely insane. That's actually less of a problem. It's like actually one of my favorite tests that I always run. Any new model that I use, anything I practice, I always type, who is Kate Garvey? Kate Garvey's my wife,
Right.
and she's not a famous person, but
Yeah.
she's known a bit. And she worked for Tony Blair for 10 years in Number 10, and she's been written about, and she's done interesting stuff since then and so on. And it's always wrong. It's always plausible. And then the best bit is when I say, and who did she marry?
Yeah.
Which is always wrong and very amusing as well. So it's some, UK politicians,
Wow.
political journalists. My favorite was when it said that she had married Peter Mandelson, which... And I said to it, oh, isn't Peter Mandelson quite famously gay?
Yeah.
And it got very woke with me. And it said, it's not really appropriate to speculate about people's personal sex lives. And gay people can get married in the UK. And I said, well, it must have been quite, in the news a lot, quite a big, oh, yes. And it told me all about who came to the wedding and all the news coverage. And so
Really?
completely demented.
Because we should say hallucinates is not a term you're throwing around idly. That is a very specific technical term.
It's a technical term, yeah. And it's because the way these models work, they ingest, trillions, billions of tokens, like everything they've read on the internet. And They just dump everything they can find into it. And then it probabilistically guesses based on the conversation that's gone before what's the most likely word or words to come next.
Yeah.
Which means that it can go down a random, weird path. And once it said one thing slightly wrong and it's reading that, it's just like, oh, well, then the next word would be this and the next word would be that. And it goes down a path. And, they're working on that and they have improved it somewhat. But there's an AI researcher, Gary Marcus, who's gotten quite notorious. He sort of has gotten a reputation as being somehow anti-AI, but he's very quick to insist he's not anti-AI. He just thinks large language models may be a bit of a dead end because this hallucination problem it's not just a minor glitch that has to be fixed. It's kind of fundamental to the way they work.
Right. I want to come back to AI later, but let's talk about the book. It's titled The 7 Rules of Trust, Why It Is Today's Most Essential Superpower. You sort of, in the book, use Wikipedia and the way that it's evolved as a case study in how important and fundamental trust has to be. There seems to be very little trust at the moment in politics, in big corporations, in the media. Why do you think that is? What's undermined our public trust?
It's quite easy to start in on the toxicity of social media, which I do think is a problem and is a factor. But the decline in trust is really much older. It's been going on since, probably the 60s, And I think there are a lot of different causes that are now coming together in kind of a perfect storm. One of the things that we've seen more recently is the decline of local journalism.
Yeah.
So this is just one aspect, right? As a result, people don't really feel like they know what's going on locally. They don't have a personal relationship with a local news organization that reports on things they know about. I also think there's been some, problematic, partly driven by the business model pressures, but partly maybe more philosophical retreat from the very idea of facts and neutrality. I mean, if we go back to, these days we think of the problem as being worse on the right. At least many people think of it that way. But of course, we should remember, postmodernism, largely from the left, was questioning the very idea of objectivity and neutrality quite some time ago and beginning to undermine the way people were thinking about really kind of old-fashioned basic things like, tell the truth and and there are facts and you can describe them fairly or not and so on. So there's a lot of different factors, but the real question is, okay, what do we do now? Like, how do we build back trust? How do we get back to a culture of trust? And for that, this is a lot of it is sort of drawing on the lessons of Wikipedia. And it's also a lot of it is quite positive in reminding us actually people value trust.
Yeah.
People actually do trust other people.
It's such an interesting thing, isn't it? Because I, specifically talking about Wikipedia, like I'm 40 years old, reading this book and your reflections on the inceptions of Wikipedia, I felt very nostalgic for the early era of Web 2.0 in the early 2000s. And I feel like I've lived the journey of Wikipedia because I was at university in the mid 2000s at a time where we were being told don't cite Wikipedia, don't use Wikipedia. The former editor-in-chief of the Encyclopedia Britannica compared the site to a public toilet. And now I think of Wikipedia as being this kind of bastion of integrity and
thank you.
research, and everything has to be cited. What were your original hopes for Wikipedia at its inception?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much that. I mean, I think, again, on my broader theme of let's not be too down on how the internet has evolved.
Yeah.
I mean, we can be a little bit down on it for sure, but, Wikipedia also came out of me observing Usenet. So Usenet back in the day was like, best comparison is like Reddit today.
Yeah, right.
Except unlike Reddit, there was absolutely no moderation whatsoever. Largely, though, it was massively full of huge flame wars, and sort of people just absolutely vile to each other.
Yeah.
You could look at Usenet and say, "Oh, yeah, this Wikipedia idea is completely never going to work because look, people are crazy. That's not ever going to be a thing." But I was convinced that actually, if the system is designed to make it a little bit easier to do the good thing and a little bit harder to do the bad thing, you can both be quite open, but also move in generally the right direction. And that's super important, that Wikipedia has never been a wide open free speech forum, but it should be pretty darn open, to criticism and debate.
How do you strike that balance? I mean, one of the things that you talk about in the book is the importance of purpose.
Yeah.
And Wikipedia has a very clear purpose, and that is it is an encyclopedia.
Exactly.
So it's neutral language. Everything is there's a kind of house style that's almost evolved almost organically. There are words that I only know because of the house style. Like I used the word mononymously in conversation the other day. I only know that word because of Wikipedia. Like it will say Beyonce Carter Knowles known mononymously as Beyonce.
It's fantastic.
Is that what you ascribe it to? This very clear purpose that it was always an encyclopedia?
Yeah, I think, sort of Wikipedia is an encyclopedia is one of our sort of core mantras, if you will. And, and also this is where I say, I'm a little bit sympathetic to the social media companies because the problem they face with moderation is a lot harder than ours.
Right.
Because we have that purpose. Social media always begins with that sort of box that's like, what's on your mind? And if you've got that sort of really open-ended purpose, wow, then moderating that's quite hard because some people, what's on your mind? Well, for a tiny fraction of people, it's something pretty horrible, It's a hard problem. Like we can acknowledge that that's a really hard problem drawing the line. For Wikipedia, it's a lot easier. It's just like, don't come on and just start ranting about some horrible person. It's fine. They might be horrible. Like Hitler's horrible, but we don't rant against Hitler in Wikipedia. We talk about how to improve the historical article about Hitler.
Yeah, right.
And that's really important.
But shouldn't your sympathy be tempered for those social media companies because they are trying to become the only bit of the internet you use?
Moderation is really hard if your only real business model is getting as many clicks and eyeballs as possible.
And where there is a kind of algorithmic basis, because obviously that's not really present in Wikipedia. Wikipedia's moderation is done by Wikipedians.
Humans. Yeah.
And listen, I know firsthand the speed at which those people work because in 2017, my cousins who were, I think at the time, about 13 and 11, discovered that I had a Wikipedia page. And they also discovered that if they registered to join Wikipedia, they could do whatever they wanted to it. And so they caused absolute havoc on my Wikipedia page. They said that I was best known by the pseudonym Madam Lily, and that I start every morning by shoving a potato in my butt.
Brilliant.
I'm not being impressionistic, Jimmy. I'm quoting verbatim. I'm being very, very direct here. I'm a kind of semi-regular co-host on a podcast that Andy Zaltzman hosts called The Bugle, which I then discussed that on the show, and the Bugle listenership absolutely played merry hell with my Wikipedia page and said that for 2 years I was a host of a naked chat show called Nude with Nish. Now, what I will say is the speed at which the misinformation and the unverifiable information was removed from my Wikipedia page
Brilliant.
was genuinely remarkable. I imagine social media companies would say part of the reason we have these kind of algorithmic moderations is because people can't move at that speed. TikTok laid off its entire content moderation team and replaced them with AI-driven systems with workers in Kenya and the Philippines. But Wikipedia surely is a case study in how the most effective content moderation on the internet is done by people, and it's effective and quick. You know, it's an apolitical space. It's supposed to just be fact-based. However, now we live in a kind of very polarized political culture, and Wikipedia has kind of been dragged into some of these culture wars. The conservative think tank in the States, the Heritage Foundation, has laid out plans to identify and target editors of the site who they say that are abusing their position by using facial recognition and a hacked database of usernames and passwords of people involved in Wikipedia. Elon Musk has accused it of being biased against American conservatives. And he, I mean, just in his characteristic, rhetorical flourish, has been referring to it as Wokepedia. Having read this book and having spoken to you for about 10 minutes, I immediately get the sense of your real commitment to facts and journalism and integrity. So it must sting you a little bit to hear that kind of stuff. It's separate from the safety concerns about the community if the Heritage Foundation is going to start publishing people's doxing people.
Yeah.
How do you feel when you hear allegations like that thrown around?
Yeah, I mean, so, on the Heritage Foundation, I mean, the main thing I've had to say about that is I remember when they used to be intellectually respectable. That's a ridiculous thing to have said that they would do. Somebody there should get fired. Like that's all I can say about that. The Wokepedia accusation. So I have two reactions to it. So first, it isn't true, right?
Yeah.
It isn't true. The idea that Wikipedia has made some sort of turn against neutrality and has become sort of a left-wing propaganda site is just false. And it's clearly false if you take a look at the content and you really take your time to look at it. At the same time, I always say, like, if somebody's got a criticism that Wikipedia is biased, we should take that very seriously.
Yeah.
And we should not just go, let's get defensive. I think we should say, you know what? Wikipedia can be biased. And figuring out where we're biased and how to fix that and what's going on, that's on us. Like, we have to really take it seriously. And so I'll give an example that's a little less fraught with, the culture wars. If you remember the story of Amanda Knox.
Yeah.
So Amanda Knox was accused of murdering Meredith Kirchner, and I saw a group of people on Twitter just like really upset about Wikipedia, saying Wikipedia is completely one-sided on this. And I thought, I should look into this, And at this point, she had been convicted.
Yeah.
And I read the Wikipedia entry, and I was like, you know what? The Wikipedia entry is quite one-sided.
Yeah.
It basically, from the moment she was convicted, it just said she did it. And it basically also did not cover the serious problems with the case that had been well documented in reliable sources and so on and so forth. Eventually, the conviction was overturned. And Wikipedia should have never taken one side or the other.
Sure.
Like, that's just not the way we're supposed to do it. So what happened there? Well, there were a handful of editors who were just quite insistent, and they were dominating the discussion, and some people from the other side, because oftentimes what happens, and we can talk about this in the broader culture wars in a second, is people drum up support somewhere outside Wikipedia, and people come in like warriors, and they don't follow the rules of Wikipedia, and they come in and start ranting, and they get themselves banned. And then the conversation goes to, and anybody who disagrees gets banned immediately. And it's like, no, anybody who comes in acting like a dick gets banned immediately, It's not about disagreeing. It's like if you came in and said,
a good rule for your life.
It's
quite a good way.
in general, it's important. And so, when this is why I've said this to Elon, and I think it's really important, is to say, like, look, if you go around saying Wikipedia has been hijacked by a bunch of left-wing lunatics, then you're doing two things. First of all, you're telling kind, thoughtful conservatives who see a problem with bias in some entries in Wikipedia, either that they shouldn't come at all, or that if they do come, they should come prepared to do battle with left-wing lunatics. And then the second thing you're doing is you're sort of signaling to any left-wing lunatics out there, your new home, Wikipedia, and then we have to deal with them, right? Like, because we know there are people who are super ideological, not really interested in facts on every side of the political spectrum. And what we really want are people who are like, okay, right, here's my position and my view on whatever matter it might be, but I get that Wikipedia isn't the place to campaign.
Yeah.
It's just to document the facts. And I think one of the reasons people can broadly trust Wikipedia is that we try really hard to say, let's be fair to all sides of a debate. Let's document what the debate is.
Where does AI stand in terms of its relationship with Wikipedia? Is it about to make the job of the website and the purpose of the website harder to maintain?
Well, I don't think so. But I do think there are a lot of things we should all be thinking about and have some concerns about. So we talked already about the AI is not yet good enough.
Yeah.
It hallucinates, so it can't write Wikipedia entries.
Yeah.
And we're still a few days away from the launch of Elon's Grokpedia, which will be written by AI completely. And so it's too early to comment, except I'm sure it's going to be terrible, like that's just, because I have deep experience in writing encyclopedias, and I'm like, yeah, it's way too hard for AI right now. But
does he just have a problem with Wikipedia? Do you think he's just annoyed that he can't buy Wikipedia?
I think he's just annoyed he can't buy Wikipedia.
Because he has tried Wikipedia, and you've responded repeatedly that it's not for sale.
The most important thing to note is that figuring out what's going on in Elon Musk's mind is a fool's errand. Like, you have no idea what he's thinking. When we think about AI with Wikipedia, obviously, in some ways, we're happy that AI is training on Wikipedia because you wouldn't want an AI trained solely on Twitter. Like, that would be a very bad AI. But we also are interested in thinking about, okay, well, look, it's definitely not good enough to write Wikipedia entries, but what are some of the ways that we might use this technology to help us?
Yeah.
And so, some of the ideas I've played with, I wrote a little script to use AI to, like, okay, go to a short Wikipedia entry and feed in the entry and feed in the 5 sources, and say, is there anything in these sources that could be in Wikipedia but isn't? Or is there anything in the Wikipedia entry that is not supported by the sources? And does Wikipedia introduce any bias that is not in the sources? Those kinds of questions. And you know what? It can generally, the better models can make useful suggestions. And they're not perfect, but that's okay. You're just making suggestions. So that's the kind of thing that I think we're going to explore to say, is there a way that we can take out some of the tedium and sort of have the resources you might need to fix something, even just reporting bias, to say, like, hey, here's a fairly obscure article. Boy, it seems one-sided. Okay. Or it contains language that sounds inflammatory.
I want to talk to you just before we let you go about 2 sort of specific pieces of UK-related news. The Online Safety Act, which we've spoken about a couple of times on the show, just a reminder, it set tough new requirements for platforms and has actually managed to sort of quite uniquely been criticised by absolutely everybody across the political spectrum. There seems to be real concerns from everybody about curtailing free speech. The Wikipedia Foundation actually made a legal challenge saying that the bill could severely impede the site's operations, which was defeated in August of this year. What were the grounds for the challenge, and what do you think that the Online Safety Act disadvantages a site like Wikipedia?
Yeah, so the Online Safety Act is well-meaning in certain regards. We can acknowledge that, like, online safety is very important. However, elements of it are actually contrary to safety completely. So here's an example, and it's a little complicated, but it's important. So if we get categorized as category 1, which is the highest risk site, which we could be because of the size of Wikipedia, like the sheer number of users, then if one user blocks another user, then what we're supposed to do, we would have a responsibility to make sure that you basically don't see that person's content anymore. So that means a troll can go through and block a bunch of editors who oppose them on some subject. And those editors can no longer edit the article that they're having a debate about because they're no longer able to see that person's content that they've produced. I mean, it's collaborative editing. So this idea of blocking people and not seeing their content anymore applies to social media. Like if I block you, I'm not going to see your posts anymore.
Yeah.
Okay, that's simple, right? But we're working together, collaboratively editing. And then the idea that we need to identify volunteers, which could be, for example, for age gating purposes, that's super dangerous. Like one of the things that's really important to us is that a lot of people who are editing Wikipedia in places like Russia, Saudi Arabia, places where you can get in real trouble for speaking some fairly simple truths, anonymous editing is quite important. So our court case was thrown out for technical reasons, really. I would term it technical reasons. Is basically the judge, this is my interpretation, I'm not a lawyer, said, well, nothing bad has actually happened to you yet.
Right, okay.
Because Ofcom might rule a certain way, but they haven't, so it's too early. But also gave instructions saying Wikipedia would have quite a good case.
Right,
like
okay.
if it came to this. And so now the latest, I just saw that Ofcom has sort of reported, we actually are, as a result of the court case, we're actually going to have to take a little more time because these human rights issues have been raised. Like, human rights issues like freedom of expression for people who are trying to write Wikipedia articles.
I do want to mention the fact that you end the book talking about the tragic death of Joe Cox, the British MP who was murdered by Thomas Mayer, who had a long history of supporting white supremacy and white supremacist movements. Joe was actually a friend of yours. So I imagine it's quite a difficult thing to include in the book. Why did you decide to include it?
It's because I really wanted to talk about, what is the end point of a toxic culture? We criticize in the book at some point, Elon Musk called a UK politician pure evil.
Yeah.
And it's like, wow, pure evil. Like, pure evil is not, here's someone I disagree with.
Yeah.
Pure evil is not, I think this person is corrupt. Pure evil is, like, what do you do with pure evil?
Yeah.
You can't really debate with pure evil. You can't really have a constructive dialogue with pure evil. That kind of rhetoric gets people killed. And it gets people killed on both sides. I mean, Charlie Kirk is a great example of a person who I would have a great many disagreements with politically. And yet he was a person who was just out talking to people. That's literally what he was doing is campaigning for ideas that people don't agree with. And if we're to the point where we think, the thing to do is shoot people, now we're in a really sad spot. And that comes from this fundamental breakdown in trust where you say, oh, there are people I disagree with who they're just horrible people and there's no talking to them. Wow, that's really sad.
The Edelman Trust Barometer in 2025 found that across 28 countries, 42% of people felt their country is very or extremely divided, and 28% of people felt that the country could not get over those divides. What keeps you hopeful that we can resolve the chasm that seems to exist between large chunks of our societies? And is it your experience with Wikipedia of generally that if you leave a group of people together, they can actually cooperate and develop something that is fact-based and reasonable?
I think that's exactly right. I mean, I think if we look at the bigger cultural pictures and statistics like that, you can fall into despair, but then you can also, as I say, like remember, like most people you meet are pretty nice, and that we can get back to that. There's a little bit of research. I don't think it's clear yet, but there is some research that suggests that people who are talking to AI have a little bit of that as well.
Right.
That they come down off of some extremist views by having an AI that will challenge them and sort of bring in other perspectives a little bit. And that's kind of good, right? That's much better than if your algorithms and the way your site's designed is keeping people on the site longer, but also leading people to think that you're destroying Western civilization. That's a business problem in the long run. That's really short term. Instead, you want, and I think this is what people at YouTube and places they are aware, it's like you actually want to go, you know what? I actually really like YouTube. Like I see all kinds of stuff on there. There's, amazing content. I found this great comedian I'd never heard of, watched 20 videos. That's fantastic. I'm learning about DynamoDB databases and single table design and, like whatever it might be. That's the good, positive feel that you should get from that kind of open space with all kinds of creativity and cool stuff. Not like, I really liked YouTube until my 13-year-old painted a swastika on his forehead, that wasn't the greatest moment.
It's not good marketing. That comedian's name, by the way, was, of course, Madam Lily. Jimmy, thank you so much for joining us on Pod Save the UK. Jimmy's new book, The 7 Rules of Trust, is out on Tuesday. Now, you've probably seen the headlines coming out of the US. Rising authoritarian threats, masked ICE agents kidnapping migrants, millions of families living one medical emergency away from financial ruin. But you probably haven't heard from the people at the centre of these stories. In her new show, Runaway Country, host Alex Wagner knows that the Americans caught in the crosshairs of President Trump's policies are not talking points. They're people, and she wants to talk to them. She'll share these real human stories from everyday Americans, too often left out of the conversation, paired with conversations from some of the smartest minds in politics to put it all in context. This isn't a glib, coastal elite, notes from Trump country kind of show. You'll hear reactions from regular people across the spectrum, incisive analysis from Alex, plus reporting from local journalists on the ground. That's Runaway Country with Alex Wagner. New episodes drop every Thursday. Make sure you subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and watch on YouTube. Now, after the break, I'll be reunited with Illness's Coco Khan to discuss some bizarre distortions of the truth by none other than Prince Andrew and Nigel Farage.
Pod Save the UK is brought to you by Shopify.
When you start a business, there are a lot of questions and concerns that people have. There's a huge amount of work that goes into it. And one of the things that you definitely can save yourself a lot of time and a lot of hassle with is by using today's sponsor, Shopify.
Shopify is the commerce platform behind millions of businesses around the world and 10% of all e-commerce in the US, from household names like Mattel and Gymshark to brands just getting started.
What if I can't design a website? Shopify's got you from the get-go with beautiful, ready-to-go templates to match your brand style.
What if I need a hand? Get help with everyday tasks like enhancing product images, writing product descriptions, or generating discount codes with Shopify's AI tools created for commerce.
What if people haven't heard about my brand? Shopify helps you find your customers with easy-to-run email and social media campaigns.
And what if I get stuck? Shopify is always around to share advice with their award-winning 24/7 customer support.
Turn those dreams into... and give them the best shot at success with Shopify.
Sign up for your $1 per month trial and start selling today at shopify.co.uk/podsavethuk.
Go to shopify.co.uk/podsavethuk.
Shopify.co.uk/podsavethuk. So, Prince Andrew is giving up all his royal titles. It comes after fresh allegations surrounding his friendship with the late convicted child sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, ahead of the publication of Virginia Giuffre's posthumous memoir.
Giuffre claims she had sex with Prince Andrew on 3 separate occasions, including when she was 17 and once in an orgy with Epstein and at least 8 other girls, and that Epstein's team tried to hire internet trolls to hassle her online.
Prince Andrew has long denied all allegations, but did anyone really trust a word that came out of this man's mouth? I mean, if anyone needs a reminder, listen to this clip from the famous 2019 Newsnight interview with Emily Maitlis.
There's a slight problem with the sweating because I have a peculiar medical condition, which is that I don't sweat, or I didn't sweat at the time.
Still so shockingly strange. No matter how many times I hear that, it still blows me away every time. The big lie that was made back in 2019, though, and I think is probably the source of the most recent round of disquiet about Andrew that's led to this news, is that he cut off all communications with Epstein after a walk in the park back in 2010.
This week, however, emails have surfaced proving this claim to be untrue, with the prince emailing Epstein saying, "We are in this together," and urged them to play some more soon.
I mean, I'm amazed this sort of lie's been able to hold for this long. Is anybody surprised that he maintained contact with Epstein after this, in spite of the fact that he said that he didn't? I don't know if it's possible to furiously shrug your shoulders, but it feels like that has probably been the attitude of the public of, yeah, we knew this was the case all along. He should have lost his royal titles years ago. I can't believe that it's taken this long. It reminds me a little bit of Starmer's approach with Mandelson, in that you make the decision so late that no one's actually going to give you credit for having made the decision. There's actually just a simmering sense of anger that it's taken this long to come around to a reasoned perspective on this.
The thing is, that if he hasn't lost his titles, he's saying he will no longer use his royal titles, but he'll still technically hold them because they can't actually be removed unless it's with an act of parliament. And despite mounting pressure, the government is not going to do it. They're saying they're not going to initiate it until the palace has. Well, why would the palace do it? Anyway, here's Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson spouting this line to Radio 4 on Monday.
This isn't a matter for the government, and we do support the statement that the royal family issued and the action that's been taken.
I've got to say, I am slightly confused with that line of reasoning. A prince within the royal family of this country is accused of sexually assaulting a child. I don't understand how that is not a matter for the government. Okay, the government is taking a string of very strong positions, rightly so, on the issue of grooming gangs in this country. But when you dismiss this story as being not a matter for the government, it makes me really question how seriously you are taking the issue of protecting children from sexual abuse. I think it sends a very, very strange message about power, and it makes it look like the sexual assault of children is something we're very worried about unless a person is so powerful that they essentially exist above the laws of our country. We should say that these are still and remain allegations, but they are incredibly serious allegations, and they have been mounting for years and years and years. And I find the line that this is not a matter for the government quite nauseating, to be honest.
I mean, the politicisation of crimes against women and girls is old school. That it's been happening for centuries. It's always been my great frustration with the conversation around the grooming gangs. I mean, listen, I'm a feminist. I want every perpetrator who has hurt a young woman or a child in this way to really feel the full impact of the law. And I want to see those rape conviction rates, which are, hovering somewhere between 1% and 3%, abysmal. I want to see those improved, of course. But you cannot deny that the fact that the government is trying to take that more seriously is political, because the perpetrators are men of colour and they're Muslim men predominantly, although of course we know that grooming in general is a multi-ethnic affair. That is of course an enormous frustration. If you just put aside the moral necessity of taking action when a representative of the UK is accused of such a heinous crime, putting that aside, even just for Labour to be shown that they're tough on things like that. I mean, it's not like loads of Labour voters love the royal family either. There's a part of me that's like, this is a slam dunk for you. Your voter base don't care for the royal family. This could actually be good for the Labour Party to be seen to be doing the right thing and actually doing something that, as you say, these rumours have been in circulation for a very long time. Previous prime ministers, previous governments wouldn't have dared. Keir Starmer could really show himself here. But here we are. We're back to the same conversation we always have about a Labour Party. What does it believe and where is its spine?
So there is some mounting pressure on this. So on Tuesday, the SNP lodged an early day motion to formally remove his dukedom with immediate effect. They'd actually lodged a similar motion on this in September, aiming to remove the peerage of Peter Mandelson, who was sacked as the ambassador to the US, as we've said, when the extent of his friendship with Epstein was revealed. Yeah, I think that it sends a very strange message out, and it creates this sense that the government is only really bothered about sex crimes when the perpetrators are men of colour. Who the fuck are the royal family if not intrinsically connected to the British government and the British state? Let's move on to, I guess, equally frustrating news. Bloomberg journalist Michelle Hussein sort of found herself front and centre of a piece of reformed UK propaganda. It's absolutely bizarre. Let's have a look and listen to this clip.
Well, a big sit down with Michelle Hussein, no, not of the BBC and Today programme, as she was for so many years, but now here at Bloomberg, this incredible media and financial news headquarters. And yeah, it's a big sit down. I don't do that many big interviews these days, but it's a bit about me, it's a bit about economic policy, and of course it's the old Russia hoax stuff that comes up again and again. But I made it clear, whatever the historical reasons for the mess we're in, whatever view we take on that, if Russian planes incur over NATO territory, we have to shoot them down. Putin's behaviour is terrible. So I hope that finally puts this nonsense to bed.
It's a sort of very slickly produced piece of political communication, which sort of has a montage of Nigel Farage kind of walking around the Bloomberg office like he owns it, and seems to suggest that he had a very sort of chummy chat with Michelle Hussein, and there's a sort of footage of her smiling and greeting him. However, a clip that's been circulating from the interview this week online has told a slightly different story about the tone of the conversation. Let's have a look and a listen.
So if you were Prime Minister and NATO jets Russian jets entered NATO airspace, where do you stand on that? Do you think they should be?
Got to shoot them down.
No questions. Whatever that does, however much that inflames tensions.
Listen, love, you're trying
Russia needs to be taught a lesson.
Listen, love, you're trying ever so hard. I'm the only person in the world, I think, that stood up in the European Parliament in 2014. And do you know what I said? There will be a war in Ukraine. It's coming. I'm the only person that got it right.
Listen, love.
Yeah.
2025. The leader of a political party, a person who, according to some polling estimations, is set to be the next prime minister of this country, has just said, listen, love, in an interview with a journalist.
And one of the most formidable political journalists in the country.
Absolutely.
Talking to her like a child, or even worse, maybe. The thing is that a lot of how people are talking about it as though it's like the mask has slipped, but not really. I mean, Nigel Farage's brand is patronising. He is not a friend of women and girls, despite whatever he might say. I mean, this probably appeals to his base.
So at the time of recording, where we are on Wednesday morning, that's the only clip that's been released of the actual conversation. The full interview is out at 6 a.m. on Friday. So I guess eventually we'll find out this week how much of a train wreck it was. My feeling is that when I watched, listen, I have no way of substantiating this, but when I watched the Reform clip, the first instinctive reaction was, oh, that interview has gone really badly. And he's basically... It just felt like he was trying to say, had a great interview with Bloomberg, really great chat, covered all the subjects, answered all the questions. You don't need to watch it. Don't waste your time. You don't need to watch it, everybody. I absolutely smashed it. It sounded like a kid at school who was like, I went on a date with a girl yesterday. We kissed. She achieved orgasm simply from me looking at her. Don't ask her about it, for the love of God. But because you'd be wasting your time.
It also gives him a second bite of the cherry, so to speak, because he has spoken about Russia with Hussein, and we don't know how well that went. I mean, Russia is his Achilles heel, so probably there's a little bit of anxiety around there. And it gives him an opportunity to sort of say his line again. Like, we covered it off. I said, we shoot it down, right? Also, just, I can't believe I'm saying this, but a pretty good tactic. So I think maybe what I might do after we've recorded this is take to Instagram and be like, just recorded Pod Save the UK, my old friend Nish Kamal. We covered off all sorts of things. And, we finally put to bed this Chatty G business. I was never that interested in it anyway. So it's been a great day.
Nigel Farage has a 30-year sort of track record of engagement and appeasement around Russia. He's appeared regularly on Russia Today. He also has called Vladimir Putin the leader that he most admires. Not to mention, and for more detail on this, is worth listening to last week's episode where we had a conversation about the ex-reform leader in Wales, Nathan Gill, who has had to step down because he has admitted to accepting bribes from the Russian government. And what I would say is that is what it looks like when Nigel Farage is pushed or challenged on any kind of a point. The sort of veneer of bonhomie and the kind of convivial man down the pub who's just having a real ale and sharing the thoughts that most people really think collapses on the merest contact with scrutiny. And if he is sort of thrust into this position where he goes into the next election as the favourite to be the next prime minister, it's going to be incumbent on political journalists who are interviewing him to push him on these kind of issues. And this is purely a gut feeling I have, but my suspicion is the more Farage is pushed on these issues, the more the veneer of him being this sort of, knockabout fun guy will collapse. He comes across as a nasty piece of work. And I think the phrase listen, love is so patronizing and just absolutely reeks of rank misogyny.
Oh, absolutely.
And just in terms of like Reform's engagement, there's two quick stories that we should just sort of allude to. The Independent this week covered the story that Nigel Farage has appointed an anti-abortion theologian, essentially. A guy called James Orr has been appointed as a senior advisor to Reform. He is a sort of anti-abortionist with strong US ties, who's very close to JD Vance. And he is part of this growing nexus that we've referred to constantly of a kind of right-wing cabal that is trying to push abortion laws in the UK and turn it into a flashpoint in the way it has become in the United States of America. So again, just on that specific issue of Farage and women's rights, it's worth looking up that story that The Independent ran this week. Also, we should discuss, again, briefly, the fact that, you know, this is a show with 2 South Asian hosts. There was a story in The Guardian this week that support for reform is surging amongst British Indians. It's still low. We should contextualise this. It's still low. It's at around 13%, but that is compared to 4% in the last election, according to research by the 1928 Institute. Coco, what the fuck is going on?
I mean, it's really sad. I feel like we are increasingly part of this. We're of a generation where you were British South Asian, right? And we were all kind of, you know, we had like shared culture, shared food, you know, this kind of shared identity, particularly in the face of coming to the empire's center and trying to forge a new life for ourselves. And I feel like then 9/11 happened and then the cleave began between like religious things. And I feel like we are of this last generation who are saying, no, we have a shared identity and we choose it. We actively choose it and we won't be divided. Seeing stories like this makes me scared, makes me sad. I'm just telling myself that it's a very small demographic of people who have drank the Modi Kool-Aid and just really hate Muslims.
You're saying there's a cleave opening up between the Hindu and Muslim communities. I mean, I certainly think that that's definitely a massive factor here. I would say, just once again, Nigel Farage and the Reform Party's position is hostile towards the concept of indefinite leave to remain. That is not something that you can insulate yourself from, regardless of your ethnicity, okay? This man is not a friend to the South Asian community. And South Asian supporting reform, I guess, like turkeys voting for Christmas might not be the appropriate religion, but what is appropriate in this of all weeks is to call them fireworks voting for Diwali. Happy Diwali. And that's it. Thank you so much for joining us on Pod Save the UK. Don't forget to follow us on @PodSaveTheUK on Instagram, TikTok and Twitter and on Blue Sky. Pod Save the UK is a reduced listening production for Crooked Media.
Thanks to senior producer James Tyndale and producer May Robson, with additional support from Nada Smilinic.
Our theme music is by Vasilis Fotopoulos.
The executive producers are Will Yates and Katie Long, with additional support from Ari Schwartz.
And remember to hit subscribe for new shows on Thursdays on Amazon, Spotify or Apple or wherever you get your podcasts.